During courtroom sessions, each case starts predictably enough. But soon, chaos erupts, transforming the courtroom into a stage for some of the most unforgettable dramas in legal history. Buckle up as we explore the most shocking courtroom moments that defied expectations, broke all protocols, and left lasting impacts on everyone who witnessed them. In a chilling courtroom scene in Russia, 18-year-old Leonid Grazer stood trial for the murder of his sister, Ariada Koral, after confessing to the crime, claiming he was ordered by Satan. Grazer sat inside a secure glass enclosure in Moscow Sherbinsky District Court, separated from guards and court staff for everyone's safety. At one point, Grazer moved toward the narrow opening in his glass cell, exchanging a few words with a guard before suddenly pausing, a glint of determination flashing across his face. In a bold move, he tried to escape, first pushing his hands through the small opening, then attempting to pull his body through. When that failed, he shifted tactics, swinging his leg out of the window in an attempt to squeeze through feet first.
Or possibly even escaping, which is exactly what Grazer's planning to do.
One of the guards, a woman, reached to grab his leg, but Grazer dropped her grip and retreated back into the box, glancing around for another way out. Realizing he wasn't giving up, a male guard tried to redirect Grazer's attention with a calm conversation. It seemed for a moment that Grazer was ready to settle down, but just when the tension started to ease, he made another break for it.
It appears now that Grazer's calmed down.
Grazer climbed onto a low bench in his cell, shimmying his way up through a narrow gap in the ceiling slats. Guards stood by, at first dismissing his attempt, until his head started pushing against the ceiling tiles. That's when the seriousness of his escaped attempt set in. As Grazer's body disappeared into the ceiling, guards scrambled to pull him back, one using a baton, while another tried to grab hold of his legs. But Grazer fought fiercely, even losing his pants in the scuffle.
One officer strikes him, but he's not giving up.
More guards rushed in, and one brought out a taser. As the taser approached, Grazer, now partially through the ceiling, pleaded with the officer not to use it.
As the taser comes out, he makes sure Grazer knows what's about to happen.
Finally, with ceiling tiles and wires dangling, he reluctantly climbed back down, pulling his pants back on before the trial resumed, now with Grazer in handcuffs to prevent further attempts. In the end, the bold defendant was convicted of the murder and, showing no remorse, told the court he had no regrets. He was sentenced to mandatory psychiatric treatment. Just as Grazer's trial concluded in Russia, back in Washington state, another courtroom was thrown into chaos. Meet Gerald Hyde II, freshly convicted of drug possession at the Benton County Justice Center in Washington state in the United States. After sentencing, he was led down the hall with other inmates, ready to be transported to prison. But Hyde had different plans. When an officer's back was turned, Hyde saw his chance. He slipped away, sneaking back into the courtroom. There, he shed his prison shirt, using it to cover his handcuffs, and continued down the hall, discarding his prison shoes to be less recognizable. Moving quickly, he passed through the lobby and made his way out to the street. But Hyde's freedom was short-lived. He was recaptured just 2 hours later. This escape attempt earned the 24-year-old an extra charge of second-degree escape, leading to a sentence of 2 years and 2 months in prison. Then there's Rayton Woodford, who was in Jefferson County Circuit Court on a probation violation for previous drug and weapon charges. Woodford's girlfriend sat nearby for support as a detective testified. When Judge Barry Willett ultimately revoked his probation, sentencing Woodford to 5 years in prison, Woodford took matters into his own hands. In a split-second decision, he bolted from the courtroom, a blur across the camera. Amid the chaos, his girlfriend's voice could be heard, pleading with him to stop.
The record will reflect that Mr. Woodford...
Deputies quickly intervened, bringing him back into custody. She claimed that in the scuffle, a deputy pushed her and pulled her hair, leading her to tearfully confront the court. Judge Willett listened, but pushed back when she accused him of condoning excessive force, reminding her that with Woodford struggling, things got rough. In the end, Woodford's girlfriend faced no charges, but he was hit with a second-degree escape charge on top of his sentence. Though no one was hurt in the commotion, it added a dramatic layer to the day's events, proof that even the best escape plans are often thwarted by determined officers. Though quickly apprehended, his dramatic escape attempt added a second-degree escape charge to his record, similar to Hyde's. Diana Lovejoy faced a completely different ordeal. She was in court in Vista, San Diego County, California, United States of America on charges of conspiracy to commit murder and attempted murder, stemming from a botched murder-for-hire plot back in 2016, where her soon-to-be ex-husband, Greg Mulvihill, was shot. Lovejoy, a mother known for her cooking videos on YouTube before her arrest,
Diana Lovejoy and quick meals are my specialty.
stood accused of hiring her gun instructor, Weldon McDavid Jr., to kill Mulvihill during their bitter divorce. Their contentious separation had included a $120,000 payment from Lovejoy to Mulvihill, and tensions ran high throughout the trial. Finally, Lovejoy returned to the courtroom in Vista, San Diego to await the jury's verdict. With her head bowed, nerves were evident as she awaited the decision. When the forewoman announced her guilty verdict, Lovejoy's shock was unmistakable. Her eyes widened, and she looked to her attorney in horror. She appeared paralyzed, staring blankly as if trying to comprehend the gravity of the moment. But what happened next took everyone by surprise. Lovejoy suddenly slumped out of frame, and the prison guard rushed to catch her, helping her back into her seat. Her eyes were open, yet she looked unresponsive, her head rolling. As the guard tried to help her stand, she collapsed again, this time hitting the floor. Placed in a recovery position, she was soon tended to by a courtroom doctor who suspected shock. However, prosecutor Jody Bretton was skeptical, believing the incident could have been staged, noting that this was a woman willing to hire a hitman. Eventually, Lovejoy was taken out on a stretcher, recovering in the ER from what doctors called a fainting spell. Once stable, she was brought back to court, where she received her final sentence, 26 years to life for her role in the crime. The next courtroom incident, this time involving Cyrus Matthews in Ohio, took a more dangerous turn. Cyrus Matthews, a 19-year-old facing misdemeanor charges in Wadsworth Municipal Court in Ohio, had just been sentenced to 60 days in jail for a road rage incident. But his reaction left the courtroom speechless. He simply walked out. Despite the judge's threats of felony charges if he didn't return, Matthews kept moving. The bailiff tried to reason with him, but Matthews hesitated only briefly before heading out, followed closely by his girlfriend. Together, they bolted to the parking lot, got in their car, and sped off. Police quickly pursued, leading to a high-speed chase. The chase ended in a horrific scene. A crash involving two vehicles left debris scattered across Akron Road. Matthews collided with another SUV carrying a couple and their baby. Thankfully, no one was seriously injured.
Where's he at? All right, we're gonna have multiple vehicles, airbag deployment. Ma'am, are you okay? Okay. She's okay. All right, we got squads coming. Ashley, help them get out! Help them get out! He's up here!
But Matthews' choices had consequences. Overcome with emotion, he faced an additional 425 days in jail for aggravated felonious assault. Now, compare this to the case of Joel Delgado in Little Rock, Arkansas. Delgado, who was facing burglary and firearms charges, claimed he couldn't walk and needed a wheelchair. But as he was wheeled into court, he tricked the officer by pretending to lose his shoe. When the officer bent down, Delgado leaped out of the wheelchair and sprinted away. With no radio, the officer struggled to call for backup. Delgado enjoyed a few hours of freedom before being recaptured across town. Charged with felony escape, he ended back up in a wheelchair, insisting he couldn't walk. Then there's the case of Tanner Jacobson and Cody Howard at the Lewis County Courthouse in Weston, West Virginia, USA. Both were in court for driving with suspended licenses. Just as Judge R.W. Buzzard prepared to address them, they dashed for the exit, handcuffs and all. Judge Buzzard didn't hesitate. He chased them out of the courtroom and down a flight of stairs. Howard tripped on his prison shoes, and the judge caught him before he could escape. Jacobson managed a few more blocks, but eventually stopped, realizing, "What am I doing right now?" Initially facing 30 days, their impulsive decisions led to much longer sentences. Wilkins is defending himself in an Ohio courtroom against several assault and weapons charges from a 2004 shooting. After a chaotic first day, where his antics forced the judge to repeatedly clear the courtroom, day 2 isn't looking any smoother. Right from the start, the judge asks Wilkins if he has any witnesses.
Mr. Wilkins, do you have any witnesses here present today?
When he admits he doesn't, he asks for more time to prepare, but the judge, reminding him that he's had months, denies the request.
You've had months to research this matter. This is why I suggested to you that you have counsel.
The trial proceeds, with the prosecution calling a police officer to the stand. When it's Wilkins' turn to cross-examine, things take an unexpected turn. Mid-question, he dramatically collapses. Court deputies, who've already dealt with his theatrics, rush to his side. The judge, unimpressed, calls for the courtroom to be cleared once more. Trained medics in the courtroom lift him back into his chair, and the nurse checks him over, finding no real issue. As Wilkins slumps in his chair pretending to be unconscious, the judge notes for the record that he's breathing normally and appears to be faking sleep. A deputy waves smelling salt under his nose, prompting Wilkins to jolt back to life as if he's had a miraculous recovery. Despite his theatrics, the judge resumes the trial, warning him about his disruptive behavior. Eventually, Wilkins is removed from the courtroom in a wheelchair, his act failing to sway anyone. In the end, his antics only sealed his fate, and he's sentenced to 42 years in prison. If you thought Wilkins' antics were wild, Daniel Nicholson's courtroom escape attempt might top it. At 35, Nicholson was at Christie's Beach Magistrates Court in Adelaide, South Australia, for a bail hearing on weapons and driving charges. With a long record of petty crime and drug use, he'd arrived in court high on meth. When Magistrate Sue O'Connor revoked his bail, a visibly shaken Nicholson threw his hands in the air, pleading with her to reconsider.
Miss, please, miss.
Please, miss. I'll show you what please, miss is.
Expecting to leave court on bail, he wasn't prepared for this turn of events, and as his frustration grew, things quickly escalated. A sheriff's officer stepped in to settle him down, but Nicholson had other plans. He leaped onto the side of the dock, trying to scale the glass panel above. Officers scrambled to pull him down, wrestling him as he struggled back up, vaulting onto the desk. In the chaotic scuffle, a police prosecutor managed to grab him, even pulling his pants down in the process. The scene became even more intense as Nicholson's supporters, waiting outside, stormed the courtroom. A woman holding his young son pleaded for mercy, crying out that Nicholson was a sick man who needed help. Meanwhile, the officers wrestled him to the floor and finally managed to cuff him. The struggle left 2 sheriff's officers injured, and Nicholson ended up with a 12-month jail sentence for the escape attempt. The judge warned him to grow up and to get clean, or prepare for many more years behind bars. As you've seen, courtroom chaos can unfold in unexpected and dramatic ways, from escapes and scuffles to emotional outbursts and desperate stunts. These moments serve as powerful reminders of the pressure, unpredictability, and sometimes even the humor that can arise in the halls of justice. But what do you think? Which story shocked you the most? And do you believe these attempts were driven by fear, desperation, or something deeper? If you enjoyed these stories, make sure that you hit that like button, subscribe for more courtroom drama and real-life tales, and turn on notifications so you won't miss our next deep dive. And let us know in the comments below if there's another unforgettable courtroom moment you'd like us to cover. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.